Something major is unfolding on the world stage right now, and hardly anyone is paying attention. The United States just hit Switzerland with a harsh 31% tariff, and in response, the Swiss are beginning to cut ties with America. That puts around $50 billion worth of exports at risk. This isn't just about fancy watches or chocolate. We're talking about essential medical supplies that might vanish from U.S. pharmacies, all while prices for other goods climb sharply. Washington's new approach is being called strategic uncertainty, and yes, it's exactly as confusing as it sounds. The U.S. is no longer following a clear set of rules. Instead, it's making the global community guess what's coming next. Under Trump's second term, America has adopted a kind of economic unpredictability: threats, penalties, rewards, then sudden reversals. This meeting wasn't just for show. Switzerland and China agreed to deepen collaboration in finance, science, clean energy, education, and even winter sports. They also announced 2025 would be the year of culture and tourism. As part of the deal, China lifted visa rules for Swiss visitors, and Switzerland promised easier entry for Chinese tourists and business travelers. As the U.S. ramps up trade wars and distances itself from longtime partners, Beijing responds with patience, trade deals, and strategic soft power. Switzerland's decision to shift is more than a one-off. It's a clear signal to the global economic system built after World War II. Trust on the world stage is wearing thin. Even neutral countries are exploring their options. And if Switzerland is starting to hedge, who might be next? Of course, not every nation will shift direction overnight. Many still rely heavily on U.S. military protection and financial systems. But a shift has clearly begun. Here's what's important. This change didn't start with Trump. Even under Biden, the U.S. began stepping back from globalization, supporting local production and cutting China off from key tech sectors. But Trump? He hasn't just stepped back, he swung a wrecking ball at the whole system. Tariffs have come roaring back, not just to defend American jobs, but to pressure other countries into changing their behavior. And here's the twist. Trump often claims that the U.S. is being treated unfairly by the rest of the world. But the World Bank paints a different picture. China's average tariff is just 3%, not 67% like Trump says. Even if new tariffs are paused, America's standard rate now sits at about 10%. That's 3 times higher than China's. Meanwhile, Trump's team loves to boast about over 200 new trade deals. It sounds impressive, until you realize that most of them are small, buried inside larger, unresolved negotiations. There's no big vision, no roadmap, just a stream of flashy headlines and confusion. It's economic policy driven by shock and spectacle. And as this drama plays out, everyday Americans are left paying the price. Costs on basic goods have surged by 20%. Some Chinese items now come with sky-high tariffs of 245%. That's raising prices on everything from electronics and appliances to toys and clothes. Families are cutting back. Even wealthier shoppers are starting to hesitate. Importers saw what was coming and rushed to buy extra inventory earlier this year. Now warehouses are jammed and new orders are slowing down. Experts predict imports could drop by 77% this quarter alone. And it's not just foreign suppliers getting hurt. U.S. businesses that rely on these imports, factories, stores, and shipping firms, are all feeling the pain. Swiss watches, German auto parts, Korean tech, it's all becoming too costly for U.S. buyers. American companies that depend on these foreign parts are getting squeezed. Some are cutting production, others are hiking prices. And just like that, inflation is creeping back in, at the worst possible time for the economy. Here's the kicker. The U.S. manufacturers who were supposed to benefit from the tariffs, they're struggling too. They still need parts from overseas to build their products. Car makers, tech firms, pharmaceutical companies, they're all facing delays, rising costs, and shrinking profits. Made in America sounds good on paper, but in practice, it's slower, more expensive, and sometimes simply not possible without foreign supply chains. But perhaps the biggest damage is to trust, and trust is hard to rebuild. For decades, the U.S. was seen as the anchor of the global economy, promoting fair trade, showing stable leadership, offering predictable policies. That image is cracking. Countries that once relied on Washington are quietly looking elsewhere. India is building closer ties with Russia. Brazil is strengthening trade with China. BRICS is gaining ground. Even Europe is stepping back and building its own defenses. A new world is forming, one where trust is fading fast and partnerships can fall apart without warning. And here's the hard truth. Globalization isn't just slowing, it's unraveling, and it's the U.S. that's helping push it over the edge. That said, many Americans do feel abandoned by years of free trade, and the push to protect local industries isn't without reason. The real challenge? Creating a plan that defends jobs without isolating allies. Yes, America might see a few quick wins. A factory or two might reopen. Maybe the trade deficit dips a little. But in the long run, the cost could be massive. Higher prices, fractured alliances, and a global economy that's chaotic and lawless. And once that kind of world takes hold, good luck putting it back together. While Washington keeps sending out tough statements and rolling out tariffs, Beijing is playing a very different game. China isn't making noise. It's quietly closing doors with careful calculation. It's slowly cutting off access to its $17 trillion consumer market. And now, American companies are starting to feel the freeze. Here's the part hardly anyone brings up. Most American companies aren't raking in their profits by shipping products to China. Their real treasure lies inside China itself. Apple, Starbucks, McDonald's, GM, they're not striking gold with exports leaving Long Beach. Their jackpot is the shopping mall in Beijing. In fact, U.S. businesses earn 6 times more from operations inside China than from exporting to it. Now imagine what happens when that stream of income begins to dry up. China isn't rushing. It's playing a long game, adding delays, creating subtle regulations, gently encouraging people to buy Chinese-made goods instead. It's quiet, it's legal, and it's doing real damage. Corporate earnings are dipping. Stock values are trembling. Boardrooms behind closed doors are growing nervous. To be fair, some American companies are trying to shift away from China, investing in places like India and Southeast Asia. But this shift is still in progress. It's nowhere near complete. And here's the real twist. This time, China can afford to pull away. Back in 2018, Chinese consumers didn't have many local choices. In 2025, that's changed. They have plenty. Xiaomi and Huawei are squeezing Apple out of the picture. Local coffee shops like Luckin are giving Starbucks serious competition. And Tesla? Chinese electric vehicle brands are offering models for half the price. It's been a painful retreat for U.S. brands. For every American name being slowly edged out, a Chinese competitor is right there to step in. And this isn't just about fast food or smartphones. It's reaching into tech, right into the heart of microchips, those tiny parts that run everything from iPhones to missile systems. America's plan was bold. Block China's access to top-tier chips. Restrict NVIDIA's AI processors. Cut off support for China's military and AI dreams. On paper, it looked like checkmate. Enter the Ascend 91D, Huawei's new AI chip built in China. It's not as strong as NVIDIA's top-of-the-line H100, but it doesn't have to be. It's good enough. Huawei plans to ship 800,000 of these this year. That's brute force in chip form. Sometimes quantity beats quality, especially when the target is the global south. That's where this moves from tech war to geopolitical shift. While Washington tries to act as the chip gatekeeper, China is turning into a supplier. To who? Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, regions often ignored by the West. These nations don't need the best chips. They need affordable, reliable ones. And China is ready to provide. But there's still one major weak spot for Beijing chip manufacturing at the cutting edge. Designing chips is one thing. Mass producing them at levels like 5 nanometers or below, that's a whole different challenge. And for that, China still depends on one thing: advanced machines from the Dutch company ASML. But due to U.S. pressure, ASML won't sell to China. So for now, China is blocked, but not defeated. Behind the scenes, billions are pouring into research and development. Huawei, SMIC, and other Chinese firms are racing to create these ultra-precise machines on their own. The government is fueling this push with money, policy, and political will, and they're moving forward. China has already developed 7-nanometer chips. Rumors say 5-nanometer versions are already in testing. If China cracks the code and builds these next-gen chips without help from the West, it could mark a massive turning point in tech leadership worldwide. But that's still a big if. Making top-tier chips requires extremely accurate engineering, years of know-how, and collaboration across the globe, none of which can be copied overnight. If China succeeds, America's last big advantage disappears. Export bans become useless, and the tech chokehold collapses. China becomes completely self-reliant in the most powerful industry of this century. And here's the part that stings. U.S. companies could instantly lose 1.4 billion customers. China would lose access to some Western tech, But in exchange, it gains new global influence, especially in emerging markets. The rest of the world, they'll have to choose sides. And many might just bet on Beijing. So while politicians in Washington brag about cracking down on China, they may be missing the real story. American corporations are being quietly pushed out. Meanwhile, China's chip industry is gathering speed. And the U.S. grip on tech power? It's beginning to slip. That leads to one final chilling question. If the U.S. has already played its strongest hand, what's left to play? The global economy never stands still. These shifts don't happen in a flash, but they are happening, bit by bit. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss what's next. See you in the next one.